Hello and welcome to Earth Calling. We're your hosts, Ed and Lazlo. Every week we bring you a fresh slice of online content, sorting through the likes, the memes, the insta-Queens, the swipes, the scrolls, and the Twitter trolls. Together, we're laying down our 21st century digital legacy. So sit back, relax, and buckle in. This is Earth Calling.
Welcome back, Earth Callers. It's great to have you with us once more. Today we are hopping on board our spaceship and cruising on to planet Blockbuster. And I don't mean blockbusters, of course. We're not devoting a whole episode of our show to the sadly now utterly redundant video store chain. Although, actually, just quick segue, isn't there one Blockbusters remaining in the world somewhere in America, and it's basically just it sells donuts or something like that?
Exactly. I think there's one Blockbuster remaining, at least when I last checked. Not that I check it regularly. And I think it's in Alaska. And the reason it's in Alaska is because the internet speeds are pretty low and broadband is super expensive. So therefore, like, people actually, it's not feasible to stream data and therefore consume, drumroll, our main focus of today, which is
Netflix. Of course, you're right, because out in Alaska, you've just, slain a moose. It's kind of slung over your shoulder. The last thing you want to do is go back to your home and struggle with the buffering on your very poor internet connection. You just head on right to Blockbuster. Take a...
Is that...
yeah. Yeah, Alaska.
I was going to do more of a Sarah Palin kind of, oh, you want to play ball, do you, Jeff? I'm just a hockey mom, and I've just killed a moose, and I want to go home and watch a DVD.
Sarah Palin was just so 2008.
That was a pretty retro reference, yeah, all of our young listeners.
But our young listeners will, of course, be familiar with Netflix, and I think, Ed, it'd be good for you to explain a bit about how it started, because we need to really go back into the past to understand how our beloved video store chains became totally useless.
Cast your mind back. Picture the scene. It's 1995. You've decided to go and rent a movie. Where would you do it? You would go down to the local Blockbuster, the local video store. And back in those days, and I remember them very well, I'd go with my dad or my mum, and you'd literally peruse, it was almost like a magazine stand, and you'd look at the different titles, and you'd go, and you'd have the best hits, you'd have the different sections, a bit like going into a bookshop now. You'd look at this wonderful array, and there'd be this smell that was sort of a mixture of plastic from the video cases and the pick and mix and the popcorn, and there's a whole experience to it, which I kind of miss, actually. And you'd pick it off the shelf, and it was always an empty video box. I don't know if you remembered. You sort of go around to the front, and then they'd put an actual video in it, and sometimes they wouldn't have it in stock.
They go to the back.
Yeah, and you'd be like, wait, hang on, what? I'm thinking back on that now. It's insane. You'd go home, you'd plug it in, it would whir, it would load up, and then you'd sometimes have to rewind it because they'd have forgotten to rewind it. So you'd sit there and watch the film in reverse for 5 minutes, but try not to look. And then you'd finally be able to watch it, and there'd be adverts before that you'd try and fast forward. And you'd listen.
And if in a viewing session you decided, bit late, we'll save it for tomorrow. Then the next day, of course, to get back to the section that you're at, you would have to choose a time window, wouldn't you? It would have these different scenes that you'd have to choose from to get to where you were.
Yeah, so that's jumping ahead slightly. That's DVDs, but we'll forgive you for that. But yeah, so video was, of course, static. It was just a bit of film in a box that would reel around. So yeah,
I thought you were talking about... Okay, yeah.
But in 1997, all that changed. And a man called Reed Hastings and his business partner Mark Randolph decided that they could start sending these new things called DVDs in the post. And they couldn't do it with a video because it was too clunky, but they decided to mail these DVDs in the post, and they would offer you no late fees. And supposedly the story started when Hastings got fined $40 in a late fee. I don't know if you remember, but if you returned it late, they'd be like, no, that'll be like £40. And you'd be like, wait, what? It's like more than the cost of buying it. So he was annoyed. He started this company, and it went on to huge success. But what very interestingly happened was they got to 2001 and they were doing pretty well. They had lots of subscribers, but they were massively in debt. And then 9/11 hit and people's disposable incomes were smashed. And so at this point, the company was losing shed loads of money, and they actually went to Blockbuster, and Reed said, guys, we're in serious trouble. We need a bailout. Can you buy us? And he said to Blockbuster, can you buy us for $50 million? 50 million. And Blockbuster said, no, you guys are pipsqueaks. We don't want it on your bike. Subsequently...
That is so tragic.
Yeah. And of course, we know the story, but subsequently DVD players plummeted in cost. So DVDs became a lot more accessible to people. And Blockbuster is now dead. With the exception of Sarah Palin's store in Anchorage, Alaska, and Netflix is worth, I think, about $200 billion in terms of market cap. So it's an amazing story, and it has given us what we have today, which is a global internet behemoth that is responsible for some of the best online content there is, I would say.
I think it's just astonishing the rate at which Netflix is devouring different genres and making them its own. I mean, think about reality TV. Reality TV we associate so strongly with live viewing, watching the TV and watching a bunch of idiots in a house just, being filmed and revealing weird things about themselves. Netflix has really reshaped that and created its own binge watching of these shows.
Yeah.
Where you don't, as opposed to, having this 24-hour cycle of Big Brother, let's say, it just will release a whole season, which is together, 12 hours, 24 hours of viewing content. But so compulsive is the content that you find yourself watching all of it in one sitting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's just completely redefined like what we consider to be television or like audiovisual entertainment. Like if you think even the phrase reality TV implies there is a TV involved, like even television itself has kind of become this weird redundant phrase because everybody watches everything on their phone. Like everyone watches YouTube and consumes content including Netflix on their phone or their laptop, and television as we knew it is completely dead.
I mean, do you remember the days when on a Sunday, it was very exciting because you got the Sunday Times and it came with the culture pages, and that would be the TV schedule for the week. Mm-hmm. So on Sunday, you'd open up the TV and you'd kind of, underline it. So, Wednesday, 7 p.m, I could make myself available. And then you kind of then you highlight it and you think, Bridget Jones's Diary, yes, please.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, I don't know.
The Lazlo family lunch table on a Sunday. Oh, dear Lazlo, what have we got on the chopping block for next week? And then you say, well, Daddy, I think we've got Bridget Jones 2, The Edge of Reason. And then he says, well, wonderful. Why don't you pop it in my diary and we'll all settle down with a nice cup of cocoa on Wednesday evening.
But Father, Homes Under the Hammer is clashing with the World Championship snooker finals.
I don't give a damn. I need to know what's happened to Bridget and her fucking diary. But back to the topic at hand, Netflix. I think that one key point I want to raise in our discussion is the fact that Netflix did pioneer this idea of original online content. So they realized very early on that the real wins would be in controlling the content they had, right? Because Reed Hastings realized that if he was beholden to the content of others, he would ultimately be in real trouble. As we see now with Disney, Disney's got Disney Plus, and they're like, well, fine, we're just not going to put our stuff on Netflix. So Netflix has had to fight its own corner, and they started this, of course, with the wildly successful House of Cards, which I think came out...
Was that one of their first original series? Was it the first original series?
I think it was certainly the first successful original one, yeah, which I think was in the early 2010s. I mean, have you watched House of Cards?
I haven't watched House of Cards, actually. I don't think I can watch it now, given the fact that, unfortunately, the lead actor is a bit of a...
He's been cancelled.
Pariah. He's been cancelled, yeah.
Yeah, I actually saw that they edited him out of an entire film. Did you see that when all this kicked off? Yeah, so he was in a film and they had to like re-edit in Christopher Plummer. And you can imagine Christopher Plummer being like, "Yeah, sorry, dude, you didn't make the first cut, but we're actually just gonna like staple your head onto Kevin Spacey for the film, but we're gonna pay you a lot." So, but no, I mean, House of Cards was wonderful, and it was.
Who does Kevin Spacey play?
Kevin Spacey, as you probably know, plays Frank Underwood, who is the megalomaniacal and Machiavellian Southern. He comes from Gaffney in the South, and he says things like whence and when, and he always uses these bizarre.
Sounds like a bloody aristocrat from Hampshire. Doesn't sound like he's from the deep South.
No, but he's got a very sophisticated tone of voice, and he says things like he always uses very descriptive imagery. So, and the brilliant thing about Frank Underwood is he talks directly to the camera, so he breaks the fourth wall. And
yes, that's the thing.
He's incredibly captivating, Kevin Spacey, despite his indiscretions. He's very compelling. But yeah, he uses these great analogies where he'll say something like, "Being a president is like being a sycamore tree in the wind. You never know whence it's gonna blow." And it's like, I'm not sure I understood it, but yeah, that was pretty boss. And
also for any of our listeners who were here for an episode where Ed did his Morgan Freeman impression, I can tell you that Morgan Freeman sounds exactly the same as Frank Underwood. There's literally no
I was worried.
there.
I was worried when I was doing it. I was did sound a bit like Morgan, but Morgan's a bit more like that. And Frank is a bit more, yeah. Anyway, but they're probably from a similar state. I don't know where Gaffney is, but Frank's an absolute boss, and so he kickstarted the Netflix original series, Bonanza, which has subsequently led on to such greats as Narcos, Orange is the New Black, Ozark, Money Heist.
Ozark.
Yeah, Money Heist. Have you seen that? The Spanish one? And Money Heist.
Pues claro que sí, La Casa de Papel.
Casa de Papel, of course he watches it in the original, yes. So Money Heist is Netflix, and what else have they got? Like Narcos, I think, is a very big one, which is also, so that's South American, obviously, about Yo soy Pablo Emilio Gaviria Escobar.
Malparido.
Yeah. What does he say?
That's what you say.
Plato?
Malparido. Oh, yeah. No, plata o plomo. Plata o plomo.
What does that mean?
But you know, of course, it means
money
lead
or lead or something.
Money or lead, yeah.
Probably money or lead,
no, but plata is silver.
Lead or money. So how about it? Lead or money? I guess it works both ways.
So I've got a quick proposition. Would you like the lead or some money?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean there, Pablo. So do you mean lead as in pencil lead, or do you mean bullet lead? You know what I fucking mean. Yeah.
I'd rather graphite. If you've got graphite, that'd be lovely, because, you know, my son tends to bite the end of his pencils, so...
Wouldn't want little Jimmy Escobar getting lead poisoning.
Jimmy Escobar, who...
Jaime Escobar.
Jaime. I just remember one particularly memorable scene is he's early on in his kind of looting criminal days.
I love that. You make him sound like a sort of a young, carefree teenager.
Rags to riches. Rags to riches.
Like,
this is a real...
he's, just robbing the local pawn shop and, just sort of finding his fees. And before you know it, young Pablo's grown up into a real coke baron.
Well, put it this way. Early on in his career, he wasn't shipping around, 100 kilos of coke in his truck. He had just secondhand TVs and radios.
Yeah.
So in that sense, he was this little young whippersnapper just trying to make a name for himself. But he's trying to smuggle these things across a bridge, and the policemen come up to his van and they start asking questions. So, we're going to have to see what's in there. And Pablo Escobar just gets out, and there's around 5 of these police officers, and he just goes up to each one of them in turn, as if, they're in this line. He just goes up to them, and he just proceeds to tell them exactly where they live, who they're married to, what their kids are, and where their kids go to school.
Yeah.
And once he's done all of that, he just opens the back of his truck and I think gives them each like a television for your son Jaime.
Yes.
Yes. Or for your daughter Elisa, because of course she liked to play with toys. No.
Yeah. It's classic. It's classic mafia style. Who got there first? It's like the mafia guy in Italy who's going, "Oh, it's a pretty nice car you got there. Wouldn't want anything to happen to it." That was more American, but yeah.
And how's your wife, Aubrey?
Yeah.
Because you know, she loves those daisies, doesn't she? And she loves scrambled egg on toast with a side of lemon juice and oddly specific.
Yeah.
She loves that Inverness smoked salmon, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's got that chronic case of psoriasis, hasn't she? Lovely Audrey. Wouldn't want her not being able to buy that psoriasis medication for the local pharmacy, would we now? But they maybe they have a sort of international crime ring chat forum where they just share best practices on how to behave. But you're right, that's the scene where he says, "Yo soy Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria," and I was like, "Oof, okay, here we go."
Which is the Colombian equivalent of "My name is Marcus Maximus." Or,
Maximus Decimus.
Okay, whatever.
Commander of the yeah. But no, so exactly. So Narcos is another fantastic example. But I think we would be remiss not to address the cultural phenomenon that was also a Netflix original, or at least was certainly purchased by Netflix, I think, because there's an interesting grey line between shows that they produce and shows that they buy, and I think that they claim both as their own. But last year...
Either way, you're going to get the... Kudum.
Yeah.
The... Kudum, which, by the way, I find probably the most satisfying noise in the world. They must have spent millions of their marketing budget just to get the optimal sound effect before shows.
But, as I said, we would be remiss not to discuss the cultural phenomenon that hit our screens at the peak lockdown of last year, 2020 March, and that is, of course, Tiger King. Which,
oh my word.
Yeah, in many ways, like, if you were to design the perfect binge Netflix show, you mentioned taking over genres, but they basically have like cracked the formula. So you've got animals, which are jokes, you've got a bit of intrigue, you've got a murder mystery. True crime is of course fantastic. They made Making a Murderer, they therefore saw that people love that stuff. You set it in some deep south, wild bumblefuck nowhereville, and you get some really colourful characters, and you sprinkle on a bit of global pandemic and some coronavirus, and you've got yourself a hit. Did you watch Tiger King?
Arguably, I did watch Tiger King. Arguably, the pandemic feature is probably the most important. I mean, would a documentary about a guy who runs this weird tiger sanctuary really have gone viral in normal times?
I think
maybe.
I think it probably wouldn't. No, it wouldn't have gone as viral. It probably still would have done okay. He would have been offered. Joe Exotic would have been offered a second season. But I think there is a central question here. And to be honest, if anybody here hasn't watched Tiger King, spoiler alert, but frankly you should have. So the question on all of our minds, Lazlo, do you think that Carole Baskin killed her husband?
Firstly, thank you for the question. Secondly, before I answer the question, I will quickly just do the Carole Baskin killed her husband, whacked him. Yeah, Carole Baskin. Have you heard that?
I have the TikTok. We're merging. Okay. That's the beauty of Earth Calling. We we have all these wonderful references between the different platforms. Yeah, so Savage was remade
social
into the
cross-pollination.
Yes,
exactly.
But we are referring to Carole Baskin, the big cat lover. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens! It's Carole Baskin, a big cat rescue. Yeah. So, but did Carole kill her husband?
I really like to criticize your accents more than I like to praise them, and this time I'm just going to give you a lot of praise because I couldn't quite keep my laughter to myself.
Lazlo, you are one cool kitten. Stay cool, cats. So no, but I mean, this wonderful cat-loving...
that Carole Baskin, all likelihood, she killed her husband.
Really? Wow. Interesting. Okay. So I actually would disagree with that. I think she, on balance, probably didn't. The guy basically just jetted off to, in my opinion, probably just headed off to Mexico. He's probably down there hanging out with, not El Chapo, not Escobar, but some of those lads off the grid.
Why is he doing that, though? Why did he leave?
Well, he felt very sort of... he did feel threatened by Carole.
Well, there we go.
No, but I mean, he wanted to get away from it all. I think he had debts or something. He was nervous.
Yeah, he was very nervous. You're right that his wife often would brandish a gun at him and threaten to kill him.
No, but come on. I mean, she didn't feed him to the cool cats, did she?
Isn't it just amazing because it's just the most enticing idea, or in a very morbid way. It's just the most incredibly bizarre possibility, which people have really latched onto, and also explains a fair bit about why they didn't find his body. Well, they didn't find his body because it's been ingested. but yeah. I don't actually. I'm mainly saying that I think she did because to be honest, when I see her speak and the way that she comes across in the interviews in Tiger King, something just ain't right. It just feels weird. She feels a bit off, and
you got a weird feeling in your gut, boy. But the rich tapestry of characters was second to none, because you had Carole, who is extremely colourful, and you had Joe Exotic, who was a gay cowboy, and fucking Carole Baskin. She's going to be the enemy, but then you had like the guy who didn't have any legs, and then you had like
the two husbands.
You had the poor zookeeper woman who had her arm ripped off by a tiger, and then you had the guy who sort of filmed it all.
The filmmaker.
He was almost the best. And I turned up there and I just said, "You gotta keep rolling with this interview." And I just couldn't believe it.
You gotta keep rolling. And I said, and the next day I walked in and it burned to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot that. They burnt it down. And I thought, it's gotta be Joe, but Yeah, Rick. I mean, he was nuts. But the whole cast was great.
So, Ed, I think I might lower the tone here because you just said that you enjoy watching, true crime thrillers, and that's all good and well. But I have to confess that the way that I like to consume Netflix is actually more down the reality TV show route. And I'm a bit embarrassed to say that in the past year and a half, I've watched the shows Too Hot to Handle, Love is Blind, The Circle, Dating Around, Best Leftovers Ever, 100 Humans in their entirety.
Wait, what? I've literally...
Precisely none of that was done in research.
I've heard of zero of those. I thought you were going to be like, oh, I like The Bachelor, or there was that other one, sort of First Dates or something. I mean, what?
I think our recommended stream probably looks quite a lot different.
Yeah, well, you'd get some soppy drama that would be a 99% match, whereas mine would be, trying to explain the Oklahoma bombings. But okay, fine. So talk me through these shows.
Okay, I'll try to give one-line synopses for these. Too Hot to Handle, a show where a bunch of very hot men and women are on this island together, and if they engage in sexual activities or get with each other, they are punished, and the amount of money they can win from this show goes down each time.
What? Wait, what? So, okay, so they go on to an...
You must have heard of
I've never heard of
bloody
that.
Hell.
So hang on, so you go onto an island and the objective is not to get with anyone on the island, is that right? Because I mean, I would be really, really good at this show. I mean, I can tell you.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought of myself. Yeah, Too Hot to Handle, yes, is ridiculously attractive men and women who are on this, and they're sanctioned each time that they even so much as touch each other. So a kiss, for example, might lead to the pot of money, let's say 100 grand, being reduced by 5 grand. So the next day it's announced to the group and everyone's like, oh my god. And it's really funny because it's a concoction of different nationalities. It's not homogenous as usual in these countries. It's like all British people. You got Australians, Americans, British people. Next day someone's like, who the fuck had a shag in the shower? Go on, put your hand up. Who the fuck got naughty in the bedroom? And everyone's kind of sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
It was only a bloody kiss, mate. I didn't realise it was going to be 5 grand. Seems a bit steep to me.
There was a chocolate fondue with strawberries.
Yeah, what was I meant to do? Yeah. She was all over me.
I mean, I think people who are listening to this now will find that you are in the dark here, and that you are in the wrong, because this is an enormous show. perhaps as enormous as the next on my list, which is Love is Blind.
Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
fine. I have heard of that one. That is the one where they don't get to see each other, is that right? So they talk. Do they talk
Exactly.
through a wall or something, or how does it work?
Exactly. They talk through a wall, and they they basically have to propose to the person they feel strongest to.
Propose
it's all
a
set
date,
up to
or
no, literally propose marriage. So they get engaged without ever having seen each other.
Come on.
And then half of the show is them meeting blind, and then half of it is them actually starting relationships in the real world. So you have the big reveal moment, and then it culminates in two people standing, by the officiating pastor in a church, and he's asking them to say "I do." And if one of them isn't quite invested in the idea of marrying, they just will say, "I do not."
Wait, hang on, but that's pretty dramatic. Surely they could just reveal that before the bloody ceremony. But okay, fine, I get the drama.
This is television. But yes, so Too Hot to Handle, Love is Blind. Those were two of my staples last year, and recently I've become a bit obsessed to the extent that I binge watched it in approximately 2 days with the show Best Leftovers Ever. And it's a very simple title. You immediately know what it's going to be about. But it's basically
Food?
a cooking show where... Yeah, it's a cooking show where 3 chefs every week compete to win $10,000. And they have to turn leftovers, a takeaway box of pork chow mein or chicken tikka masala, into a totally new dish, and it's quite amazing.
Interesting, by the way, for regular listeners to the show, that Lazlo is, of course, a vegetarian come pescatarian, and whenever we talk about anything food related, he immediately jumps to meat items, and I think that just goes to show what is in his mind. We talked in the TikTok episode about how all he gets fed by the famously accurate algorithm that knows your deepest, darkest thoughts is basically content about steaks. So anyway, it's interesting that it's the chow mein that's, of course, pork rather than a vegetable chow mein, but good to know.
Well, yes, in this show, they do have to convert dishes entirely made of meat into different dishes, so it was, hard to say no to that. But it's really incredible what these chefs do to totally reimagine the leftovers that they've been given. I really do recommend it. It's also gives you lots of inspiration for dishes that you will inevitably never ever make because you're way too lazy to do anything with your leftovers, like me.
I love it how when they judge on those things, in order to build the suspense, they kind of keep you in limbo as to whether they like the dish or not. So, they'll get the dish and they'll try it. Yes. And they'll be like, this is a complete and utter masterclass. If I was someone blind, without a sense of taste, but also mad with joy at how good it was, and you're just like, and they zoom in on the contestants, and the contestants' eyes are like lighting up with the music, and then sort of, what I mean?
It reminds me of an astrology reading, a horoscope, which is like, November is gonna be the month when you realize that it's okay to be happy with you not being particularly satisfied with your partner's dog.
Things are on the horizon. General stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Watch out for someone that you speak to who refers to you in the third person.
Yeah. Someone will surprise you. Oh, fuck me. Yeah.
Anyway, you're right. In this show, they are quite careful to always give a balance of positive and negative feedback on the leftover dishes, so that at the end, you're grasping for the winner.
The true compliment sandwich, you might say. Well, that is all we've got time for this week, Earthcallers. Thank you so much for tuning in. As ever, please do not forget to download, subscribe, and throw us a like. If you have Instagram, give us a follow at earth_calling_pod. It really means the world.
And after you have done the steps so clearly delineated by a slightly obsequious Ed, please do join us next week when we will be looking for a place to stay. And not just any place to stay, a characterful Brooklyn loft apartment with a panoramic city view. That's right, we will be cruising on with our spaceship to Airbnb. So join us then, have a great week. Earth out.